Your Indian River County Commission meeting begins at 9 a.m. Please stay tuned.
Reverend Kyle Gibson, no, in fact, I think, Jim, you're going to do Jim Davis is going to do the invocation. If you'll stay standing, please, for Commissioner Bowden to do the pledge.
Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth, how marvelous is your power and your love. You have richly blessed our county with the natural resources that you've given us and the beautiful weather that we have and committed leaders. Bless this meeting today. Let the decisions be pleasing in your sight. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, it's noticed that.
Okay, any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move approval.
Okay, seeing none, we move on. Let's see, proclamations and presentations. The first presentation will be presented by me, and it was presented yesterday at the memorial wreath laying. Bill, I don't see the shirt. Are you going to accept this?
Yes.
Okay. This is designating May 13th through May 19th, 2007 as Indian River County Peace Officers Memorial Week. Whereas the Congress and the President of the United States have designated May 15, 2007 as Peace Officers Memorial Day and the week in which May 15th falls as National Police Week. And whereas the members of the law enforcement agencies in Indian River County play an essential role in safeguarding the rights and freedoms of Indian River County, and whereas it is important that all citizens know and understand the duties, responsibilities, hazards, and sacrifices of their law enforcement agencies, and that members of our law enforcement agencies recognize their duty to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, by protecting them against violence and disorder, and by protecting the innocent against deception and the weak against oppression. And whereas the men and women of law enforcement agencies in River County unceasingly provide a vital police service, now therefore be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County to call upon all citizens of Indian River County and upon all patriotic, civic, and educational organizations to observe the week of May 13th through May 19th, 2007 as Police Week, with appropriate ceremonies and observances in which all of our people may join in commemorating law enforcement officers, past and present, who are their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibilities have rendered a dedicated service to the communities, and in so doing have established for themselves an enduring reputation for preserving the rights and securities of all citizens. Be it further proclaimed, all citizens of Indian River County are called upon to observe May 15, 2007 as Peace Officers Day in honor of those law enforcement officers who, through their courageous deeds, have made the ultimate sacrifice in service to their community and to become or have become disabled in the performance of their duties, and let us recognize and pay respect to the survivors of our fallen heroes, adopted this day and signed by the board.
Bill Bruner, Undersheriff. I just want to say on behalf of the officers and the support personnel, thank you very much for this recognition. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, sir.
The next presentation is designating Foster Family Appreciation Month, and Commissioner Davis will present that.
Thank you, Commissioner Wheeler. This proclamation designating the month of May 2007 as Foster Family Appreciation Month. Whereas all children need love, support, and stability of a family, and whereas many children are currently living in substitute care away from their families of birth in a residential shelter or foster family home, and whereas it has been proven that there are in-need families able and willing to foster children with special needs, and Whereas families who have fostered these children deserve community and public agency support to sustain their work with foster children. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County that the month of May 2007 be designated as Foster Family Appreciation Month in Indian River County, adopted this 15th day of May 2007, signed by all 5 county commissioners.
Morning.
Good morning.
Rosanna Gonzalez with Hibiscus Children's Center. I'm the foster care recruiter, and I'd just like to say thank you for this recognition of our foster parents. They do such an incredible job. Last year I came here with bad news that we had 2,000 kids in supervision and only 130 homes. This year I can tell you we're down to 1,800 and 152 homes.
Good
so
for you.
Thank you.
Good for you, Rosanna.
Thank you for it.
The next presentation will be presented by Commissioner O'Brien, and that's National Beach Safety Week.
We have Cliff and the lifeguards want to come down. John?
Dennis?
You guys can't sit in the back and not come forward. Morning. Cliff, you want to introduce everybody real quick, and then I'll read the proclamation?
We have Fauna Aquatic Supervisor. We have John, Lifeguard Captain, and Joe, our Lifeguard Lieutenant for Ocean Rescue.
Great. Morning. This is a proclamation designating the week of May 21 through 25, 2007 as National Beach Safety Week. Whereas the beautiful coastal and inland beaches of Indian River County represent a world-renowned recreational resource that attracts residents and visitors by the thousands each year for water and beach activities, and whereas the aquatic environment has dangers that can be effectively managed through public awareness and the vigilance of professional lifeguards, and whereas for reasons of public safety, an annual reminder of the joys and hazards associated with the aquatic environment are appropriate at the commencement of the busy summer beach season, and whereas Indian River County residents and visitors alike must remember to never swim alone, always swim near a lifeguard, never drink alcohol before swimming, respect the power of the surf, and learn to swim. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Indian River County, Florida, that the week of May 21 through 25, 2007, be designated as National Beach Safety Week in Indian River County, and the Board urges everyone to enjoy themselves at the beach this year while taking appropriate measures to protect themselves and their children. Adopted this 15th day of May 2007, signed by all 5 Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you.
On behalf of all the Ocean Rescue Lifeguards for Indian River County, I'd like to say thank you for taking time out for having us here, and we accept this proclamation. And just to remind everybody, you know, when you go to the beach, like it said in here, respect the power of the ocean. It's an ever-changing beast, and each day brings on a new day.
For the record, I just want to be noted that I did request the chairman if we could all go to the beach and read this proclamation this morning, but he overruled me. So here we are. Anyway, congratulations. Thank you for your work. Very good. Yeah, nice meeting you. Great job. Wonderful job y'all did. Thank you.
The next item is the consent agenda. Any
Move to approve the consent agenda.
second? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Next is the constitutional officers and Indian River County Sheriff's Office, Roy Raymond, budget amendment, letter dated May 8, 2007, and found on page 71. I've asked Joe if he would give us a quick overview of what our responsibility is with constitutional officers' budgets.
Good morning, Commissioners. At the beginning of the year, we approved the constitutional officers' budget in whole in July, and certain ones get appealed if they do not agree with the Board of County Commissioners funding some to the governor. In the case of the sheriff, I think the supervisor elections and the clerk of the court, they get appealed to the governor. The property appraiser and the tax collector get appealed to the Department of Revenue. In the case of the sheriff's budget, we approved the sheriff's budget in 3 different categories. One is court services, the other is corrections, and the third is law enforcement. And within those categories, we also approved their budget between salaries, operating, and capital. During the year, they must keep their money in those designated areas unless they come back to the Board of County Commissioners for a request or approval to change within those categories. And I think that's what you have here today, is that the sheriff is requesting to approve a change between those categories so he can move money around in order to reduce his costs or better use his money this year, and also to help reduce the cost in the budget for the following year. And if I've spoken out of line, someone correct me, but I think that's in summary, that's it. I think we have Bill Bruner here today, as well as Harry Hall is here to discuss the request.
Any questions?
Jason can expand on it if I missed anything.
Okay. Any comments, Jason? I've got a couple of questions. First, I'd like to know, Harry, I guess, or Bill, whichever one of you want to respond, what accounts do you want to move the money from, and which accounts do you want to move the money to, and how much money are we talking?
Well, initially,
what are the expenditures? Those are 3 of them to start with.
Harry Hall, Comptroller, Sheriff's Office. Initially, we want to move funds from salaries to capital. We have identified through the budgetary process for a request for next year, and we've identified items that are capital of nature that we would like to purchase this year and not have to put them in next year's budget. And also, by purchasing them this year, we can attain a $93,770 price savings just on the purchasing now instead of later. However, we do want to have the option of moving monies between funds, or categories, I should say, throughout the year as contingencies come up. In the past 5 years, 6 years now, we've done that. We've been able to move monies between categories as things come up, like if we run short on funding for inmate welfare, which we have in some years. If something comes up, like the year where we moved out to Hobart and we had to take care of utility costs out there, which obviously could not have been planned for in advance, we were able to move funds to do that. So that's what we'd like to do going forward. We've been able to use excess monies where it was needed and still have, most years, monies that weren't needed turned back to the county, and they've generally been a sizable amount.
How much money are you talking to move?
Well, in past years, our capital have been running, replacement needs have been running about $1.5 million. We're looking for currently $1,276,000. Now, the reason that's not quite $1.5 million is because this year, and that'll come up in the budgetary process in July, is we've got a pretty good deal going with the phone company, where our portable radios are being replaced at no charge because they're changing, the phone company's changing the frequencies. So our existing phones, which would cost us $141,000, are being replaced at no cost. So that's not in this request. So we are requesting normal replacement of mostly vehicles, computer equipment, and radios into vehicles.
Let me ask you, in the last year's budget, you had nothing in capital. You didn't anticipate anything being in capital, an expenditure?
Well, last year we did the same thing we're asking to do this year.
Yeah. The other thing is you're taking $1,276,000 out of salaries. Is that correct? And moving it to capital?
It's anticipated it's going to be salaries, but some of it may come out of expenses. It all depends on, how much our other funds and expenses are running.
Yeah, where I'm coming from on this, and I know I went through the budgetary process as sheriff, and before that as a commissioner with the budgetary process, and we have government in the sunshine, and all these things are supposed to be on the table for accountability, and we do it. Everything we do here is brought back to the commission and approved, and there's specific items that are approved and move forward with budget amendments. And I would like to see the sheriff's office, as one commissioner, do the same thing. I think that you should budget as forthright as you can, and you got to know there's capital coming out from year to year. Next year you have no capital in your budget that's been proposed so far, and we put all the money in salaries or someplace, and then we turn around during the year and then give a blank check, which the commission as a majority has done in the past, to allow these movements to take place with really not much accountability into what's being moved, how, why, how much money, why isn't the budget for, you're going to need cars, why don't we budget for cars, we need salary, why don't we budget for salary? And the budgets ought to be, in my opinion, just like here, they ought to be pretty close to what you're going to need in those categories and areas. And then if there is something that pops up unexpectedly, which we all know it does from time to time, but I believe you should go back to the commission with a specific request and ask for that money specifically so people know what is being spent in the budget, how it's being spent, and how the budget process works.
Well, the difficulty you have with sheriff's offices is they're only government agency or office in the entire state that are not allowed to have a fund balance. Now, because of that, there is some remedy for that in that
Wrong.
that
All constitutionals are not allowed to have a fund balance.
all constitutions? Okay, I stand correct. But there is a provision in the statutes which allow the director of OMB or the board to give authority to the sheriff's office to move fundings between categories. And I checked around the state, and many of the other sheriff's offices have that authority, and they regularly operate that way.
Maybe you could give us an estimate. Maybe it'll make Chairman Wheeler comfortable if you give us an estimate of where that million, since you've got a number of $1,276,000. If you could give us a copy of where you estimate you're going to take that and move it to, and I think that would give them some.
Well, I'd like to know too is I know that there was a 12% increase last year in salaries, and that money was needed for 12% increase in salaries, and I'd like to know why. At this point, there's $1,276,000 that's anticipated as being excess funds in the salary budget.
Well, as we're growing and we've been experiencing somewhere around an 8% turnover rate, that's going to equate to over $2 million a year. Now, if all the agencies and departments decide that they want to budget less than full employment, like the school district has to by statute, they can only budget at 95% of employment, then by all means we probably ought to do that. But until everyone else does, we haven't done it either. I take that back. Actually, we've done about a 2% this year in our budget that we're coming before the board, which we're taking $1 million out of next year's budget, and it's clearly shown in there as attrition, subtraction.
And then I'll stop it. My biggest problem is when you come in with a budget, the requests ought to be as legitimate as possible. And from time to time, and the sheriff knows from time to time, that he needs to replace capital items like automobiles and radios and weapons and so on and so forth. And to not show any of that, and then to shove everything into salaries to get the budget increased and approved, and then later on in the year come in and just want to be able to move money from one area to the other, when even as the Board of County Commissioners, we approve everything here to the penny. When we have a budget amendment or something we need, it comes back in front of the board. It's usually on the consent agenda, which I think could be with the sheriff's office also. But I would like to have the accountability in here, and I would request, and I can't make a motion, but I would request that when you come back with this, come back with specifics. How much you're going to take from one fund, what funds are going in, and where's the money going to be spent?
The difficulty with that, I think the whole idea is timing. If we have what we've had in the past, we do have accountability. We come to you at the last board meeting of the year and show you exactly everything that was spent and which categories the money came from, salaries, expenses, and whether it went to capital or salary to expenses, maybe for expendable items like in the jail expenses. But the turnaround time is, if we have a vehicle and it's totaled, and we carry insurance on it, and we get the insurance money in to purchase a replacement, we can't do that unless we come to the board.
Well, that's not completely accurate, because if you get insurance money coming in off the vehicle that's been totaled, it goes back into the capital budget, and you can spend it again on another car. And
not without a board amendment.
Sure we can.
I don't know of any accountability or accounting to do that.
Well, and the other thing is too, Harry, I can't imagine in a $40 million budget that you haven't got enough money there to buy a car and work this out. And anything you have to us on by noon on Wednesday will be on the following Tuesday's agenda. So the turnaround time here is about a week whenever you get the paperwork to us. And I don't know of anything over in the sheriff's office that has to be turned around in a week or two.
Yeah. Harry, maybe if you could, give us an estimate of where you see, obviously if you looked at $1.2 million in savings, you know where your savings are. If you give us an estimate of where it is and maybe where you're moving it, that would help. And you've got an idea, since you've got $1,276,000, if you could show where you're moving it from and buying capital. We understand, I think everyone understands that would be an estimate and it's subject to change, and just update us. I think that would give the comfort. Would that give the comfort level?
I would like to have that, but I'm ready to move forward with this. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the budget amendment request from the Sheriff's Department.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, maybe you need to go over to the sheriff's office and sit down with him and iron this out if there's a big problem, but I don't see a problem with maximizing funding by moving categories. So
the only problem with it is the fiduciary responsibility of this board to oversee these budgets, and there's policies and procedures set up to do it that way, and we're not following it, and we haven't been following it for the last few years. Well, and I just think the public needs to know that. So with that, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Aye. Motion carries 3-2. Thank you, Harry.
Are you going to require an accounting? Are we to get an accounting or not?
Yes, yeah, they'll bring back an accounting, but they have they were just authorized to move forward.
Okay.
Next is a public discussion request to speak from the Goldsmith team, GMAC Real Estate, regarding forgiveness of interest on a lien found on page 72.
Hi, Heidi Laurie, Goldsmith Team, JMAC Real Estate. We have a client. Her name is Eileen Mark. She lives in New York, and she has a property, piece of land on 335 7th Road Southwest, which is Whisper and Pines. We are asking for forgiveness of interest on a lien imposed by the county on the lot that the owner required by a tax certificate. We are representing her because she is in New York. The interest is approximately $30,000. The lien is about $7,000. She does not have title insurance, and the property is worth approximately $28,000.
Assistant staff, Joe, can you?
We never recommend the reduction of this was to clean up a property. Staff never recommends a reduction in interest. Everyone else has to pay interest. Because you're out of state doesn't mean you're forgiven interest in our mind. Staff feels that the whole amount's owed. I do not think it's fair to the other people that get charged interest and pay it. So that's our position, very strongly so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know what vote's going to happen or anything, but I would need to abstain from this vote. Mr. Goldsmith and I have some financial interest together in the auction business, so therefore I would have to abstain, I believe, from this. This is his real estate firm representing this, so he may financially gain from this decision.
Will, do you want to comment on that? Is that?
No, Commissioner Davis will just need to file the disclosure form.
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't know if we need a motion. This is just a public discussion. Unless we want to take action on forgiving the interest, we can just move on to the next agenda item.
Okay. Any action taken? None? Okay. Next is request to speak from Billy L. Hitchcock regarding Code Enforcement Division decision.
I have some backup information I'd like to give to the board.
Okay.
Can I speak from this?
Certainly.
I purchased a lot out off 41st Street and 48th Avenue back in February of '06, and I subsequently received 2 building permits to put 2 new mobile homes on the property. It had 2 existing mobile homes on it. It's a .88 acre lot. It's in what they call the Palm Garden subdivision. It's 30 lots in there that are zoned RMH 8, residential mobile home, 8 units per acre. And the owner just to my south has 6 units on one of her acres, 4 units on another acre, and the owner to my immediate east, they have 4 units on the acre right behind me. And I went to the planner of the day, made sure I had everything I needed. Everything was in order. There was nothing lacking. I had my survey drawn up, everything. The houses were brought, I got the permits issued, the houses were brought in, set up, and then in October, the code enforcement came by and they said I had to stop working on the lot, and they said they'd been trying to reach me for a number of months, and I said, well, I don't have anything. Do you have anything to prove that? They said, no, we don't. And so they immediately drew up a letter, sent it to me, stating that I was in a violation of Code 911-42C. And I read that, and I can find nothing in that has anything to do with my situation, because all it says is permitted uses. No structure shall be erected, constructed, reconstructed, or structurally altered, nor shall any structure or land or combination thereof be used unless the use to which the structure and or land is to be put is listed in the permitted use section of the applicable zoning district, and the use fully complies with all the applicable district regulations, except for nonconformities are provided for in Chapter 904. And my lot is in residential mobile home, 8 units per acre district. So it fully falls, because all I have on the property are 4 mobile homes. I don't have any other structures. So I'm trying to find out where or what the problem is with my property. I don't want to be in violation of a code, and when this is the code they specify in the letter that I gave you a copy of, I need to know why I am in violation when they went through, and you have a copy of the sign-off sheet where the planner of the day signed off on my plans. Everything was done. I paid $4,270 in impact fees. I paid $6,000 in water impact fees. I paid every fee that there is applicable, and then I had to pay $20,000 to get power brought onto the property and everything, and now they're saying that I can't use it as I had proposed, and as my building plans clearly state. They say, well, they didn't understand what I was doing or anything, and I said, well, it's right there in black and white. I don't understand. and what they are saying doesn't match up with the code that they just cited me for. So I see a disparity, and I can't understand it. So I need for the board to give me a resolution as to equity in this. What can I do to be in compliance?
I think this gentleman needs to meet with, I think he's in code enforcement right now, but, and meet with staff to get understanding what his violation is, but it is in the process, and you know that we do have a distinct process that you have to go through. Unfortunately, we have to stay with that process, and if he'd meet with staff, and they'll try and explain what his violation is to, and see if he can't get it corrected, but he is in the middle of a code enforcement. He's gone in front of the code enforcement board, and there's planning, and I think Bob can maybe address it a little better than I can right now. But staff will be
what he's trying to get accomplished going to solve the code enforcement issue? I mean, I don't want to. I don't know.
Mr. Hitchcock is scheduled for a evidentiary hearing before the Code Enforcement Board next Monday. And I think that is the appropriate process to go through to resolve any of the issues that we have.
I'll ask my question one more time. Is what he trying to get accomplished going to address the code enforcement issue?
We've been working with Mr. Hiscox since last fall. He's fully aware of what the issues are. He agreed to resolve the issue informally without going to the board. He recently changed his position on that, so now we're taking the formal action before the code board. Our position is he can only have 2 mobile homes on his property, plus he has to split the property into 2 distinct parcels. He disagrees with that. He thinks he has a right to have more mobile homes. We disagree. That's a code enforcement issue. That's what the evidentiary hearing is for, before the code board, for them to determine whether there's a violation or not. And that's the due process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Well, I've met with them 4 or 5 times. My son is here, and he was with me at every time I went into that office, and every time I asked a question, I said, now, you're sure I am in code? I am not going to violate the code. Before I ever turn the first shovel of dirt to put anything on that property, I made sure everything I did. And I was told, even by the plan of the day, I had to get a unity of title because the property was split in half when I purchased it. And they said, to do what you want to do, you must unify those 2 half lots, put them together as 1 full lot, because that's the only way you can put more than 1 or 2 units on that property.
Mr. Hiska, I understand what you're saying, but I think our due process says that you need to go to Code Enforcement Board, and they'll hear your complaint and then make a decision. And at some point in time, if you disagree with them, you always have the right, after we've gone through the due process, to appeal to the Board of County Commissioners. But we're kind of getting ahead of what the process is. So I don't think we're in a position.
You don't have a right to appeal to the Board of County Commissioners. You have a right to appeal to Circuit Court for review of the code enforcement decision.
I stand corrected.
Is there some other avenue that, other than going to court to get this settled?
Maybe Monday.
Go to code enforcement.
Well, I'm going to code enforcement next week, but they have made it very plain that there is something wrong, and I cannot find it anywhere in the code.
The staff is going to have to present a case to the Code Enforcement Board, and you're going to present your counter-arguments. The Code Board will hear the evidence and decide who's right, whether it's a violation, whether you've done everything properly or not. But they'll make that decision after they hear both your side and the staff's side.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Notice scheduled public hearing March 22nd, 2007, 27th Drive petition water service north of 4th Street, Indian River County, project number UCP 2906, found on page 74. Under County Administrator's Matters, Board of County Commissioners meeting schedule, page 75. Mr. Barry?
Yes, I have two items here. One is, I'd like, in the week of the 4th of July, the 3rd of July is a Tuesday, and I was just seeing if the board wanted to have a meeting on the 3rd of July. The 4th is a holiday, and there was some discussions of canceling that meeting, and I'm just asking if the board, if they wish to have the meeting, or cancel it.
How would that affect the budget process as we move forward, Mr. Baird?
That's only the board. That shouldn't affect us at all. The second item I have on here is we had scheduled the budget workshops for July 18th and 19th, which is a Wednesday and Thursday. We found out there is water is a big issue in Florida, and there's a conference regarding the water situation in Florida on the 18th, 19th, and 20th that some of the commissioners would like to attend. I can easily move the budget workshops back to the Monday rather than start them on a Monday, the 16th, rather than Wednesday, the 18th. You'll have a commission meeting on the Tuesday. Right after that, we'll go straight into budget workshops again, and probably be able to end them either on the 17th or 18th. That will give the commissioners an opportunity, if they wanted to, attend the water workshop on the water situation for our water management in Florida.
Do we have the 17th would be a Tuesday?
The 16th is Monday, the 17th is a Tuesday. You will have a commission meeting. What we do is do a commission meeting, we'll try and keep it light, and then we'll go straight into probably have the budget workshop to start at 1 o'clock or 1:30. If you ran late, it would just have to start later, and we would just go later. That's up to the commission. It's just trying to move it so that you can accommodate the water management workshop that's at the end of the week, if you would like to attend it.
Okay. Any other questions? Matt, we get a motion?
Move to approve the County Administrator's recommendation.
Both of them.
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign.
Thank you.
Motion carries. Funding of children's services.
Yes, I'm trying to get an idea of what we should, in the child services code, the child services opportunity to have a maximum funding of .125 mil. And with the budget constraints that we see coming down and the current economic situation in the community, we would like to reduce the amount that we're going to give to child services in the next fiscal year. We're probably going to be reducing a lot of the budgets. In the current year, we have funded the child services at $1,208,190. And I'm recommending that we give the advisory board some direction, tell them to come in at 1.1 million, cap it at one point, the request at 1.1 million, and also have a second alternative if we couldn't fund it at capping at $1 million. I think it's trying to give them direction before they go through the whole process and hear them. I think it's a better idea to give them a cap to where this is a maximum funding that the board is going to allow, and I think it helps them up front before they start the process of going through the budgets. So I'm recommending that we request that they look at funding at 1.1 million and have two options as they go through the budget requests.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'm the liaison for the Children's Services Advisory Committee, and I think this is one committee where, they're serving thousands and thousands of children in our community that need support. This keeps them out of trouble after school. There's drug intervention, there's counseling, there's mental health. There's a very wide range of children that are serviced through this funding. Also, the Children's Services does have an accountability component. Each agency has to come back to the advisory committee with a report documenting how those dollars were spent and objectives that were reached and things like that. So I think it's money very well spent. I do fully understand we have a tough, tight budget year, and I think everybody's going to have to make some cuts. But I just want to get across the point, this is money that is well spent. It's on our children, on our future, and probably helps prevent a lot of other problems that might manifest itself if we didn't have this program. Understanding all that, I would support the reduction to 1.1 million, but I'd like to hopefully let us just keep it at that and not have to make any further cuts.
I'll second that.
Do you want to add for the backup Plan B, just for the 1 million, depending on what the state does to us or doesn't do to us? I mean, we're fiscally responsible. We don't have to go that direction, but to go back if we didn't do A and B.
I think that probably Children's Services is aware that they may have to tighten their budgets a little bit, but I think formally I'd like to see us just stay at the 1.1 million.
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, anything the state does is going to be done probably, what they're projecting is after the first of the year, which would affect next year's budget, not this year's budget.
Yeah, and we're talking about next year's budget. They've got that session that's going to be in the last week of June. We're not going to have any time to react, really, and that's what a lot of the counties are concerned with. We have to set our millage in July, and, the budget process is not a small process, so we're getting concerned. We're sending that message that we're going to have to reduce our budgets department-wise, and it's going to be a very hard year, lean year.
Joe, what I'd like to recommend, and it's not, well, it ties into the budget. I'd like to see maybe you and Jason and any of the commissioners that would like to go, but particularly, I think we need to send a delegation up there that week, as other counties are doing, to let them know how strongly this could affect local government. And you don't really see the state doing anything with their budget. There's numbers where their budget's almost doubled in the last 5 years, or numbers of that effect from 40-some billion to 70-some billion. But anyway, I think that the stronger show we have in Tallahassee, and I know we have Mr. Brooks, who's a very good lobbyist, but, it's something I'd like to get your input on, Joe, and see what you...
When is that?
It's going to be in June.
What amazes me is, we had the big state boom, and we had a lot, and they got just a huge amount of sales tax revenue. I'm just surprised they didn't cut their sales tax from 6 to 5. But I think if we should do it, they should do it.
Well, unfortunately,
why don't they set the example and do it?
I think unfortunately they're looking at the political pressure rather than looking at the whole process objectively, and how it's going to affect counties, and particularly some of the smaller counties are going to be hurt much, much worse than Indian River County. And at some point in time, in the near future, and nobody knows where they're going yet, but it's kind of like charter government everybody's talking about, but nobody really knows what we had at the time because we hadn't adopted anything. Services are going to have to be cut, but I would like to see, particularly you and
you as chairman,
whoever would want to go. Wesley's the Tallahassee guy. I don't get a thrill out of going to Tallahassee anymore than I have to. But
what are the dates?
But I think that we need to, and all of us could go up if you wanted to, and it'd probably be a good show, but I think some heavy lobbying needs to be done, and I know other counties around the state are sending delegations to do just that, a show of strength.
Yes.
Why don't you look at that and bring it back to the next meeting? We got time, if you would, please. Okay? Okay, back on Children's Services. Sorry for the.
I agree with you about the cuts that we're possibly facing along with the municipalities. It's not just the counties, right. It's all government. And we have to do our due diligence to the community. And this isn't the only group we're going to be looking at. Right. And it's tough when they come before you. I'm just suggesting that the county administration is trying to pad this a little bit so it won't be so painful, so you can really look at your budget and see what possibility you might have. We don't want to go into personnel, but we might have to do that too.
Okay. Where are we at? We have a motion and a second?
That is correct.
Still have a motion to keep it at the 1.1 million, which is a close to 10% reduction.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. The Next item is consideration of the Agriculture Committee's recommendation on identification.
Chairman Wheeler,
Yeah.
I just got handed something here it just came in about 9:35 this morning. We just voted on the last item to move the budget hearings due to the water management seminar. Because of the complaints that they got, they've canceled the water management seminar until October. All the counties were complaining, so you do have the option of keeping the budget schedule where it was if you would like.
Well, let's go back and redo that and keep the budget schedule where it is.
Move to undo what we just did.
Second. Except for you're going to cancel the July 3rd meeting.
That is correct.
Okay. I'll second.
We have a motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Consideration of the Agriculture Advisory Committee's recommendation on identification and plugging of abandonment artesian wells on new development sites and found on pages 77 through 95.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Roland DuBois, Chief of Environmental Planning. Artesian well use and potential impacts to the shallow aquifer have been issues that have been discussed before the Agriculture Advisory Committee. I attended a particular discussion at one of their meetings back in October, which was also attended by St. John's River Water Management District staff. At that time, the county environmental planning staff and St. John's gave her an overview of how the county and district address artesian wells on both new development sites, but also through a well plugging program that the county and St. John's have partnered on since 1989, where we do plug wells as a separate program. This particular recommendation that came from the committee back in October was essentially to recommend to the commission and then through the commission to staff that staff continue to look at and be as diligent and more diligent as is possible in identifying and controlling artesian wells on new development sites. And so that's the recommendation. At that meeting, Mr. Adair, who's the chairman of that committee, also provided staff with a GIS map overlay or information on St. John's consumptive use permit wells in the county. Help us identify, and it does help us identify wells on properties as new developments come in that can be looked at to red flag whether or not there's well issues that need to be addressed. So we have been using that information, and what I'd like to do is just give a brief overview of what the county staff does and how we potentially could enhance that and what some of the issues are, and if there are members of the committee here they may want to speak to. But focusing on the new development projects aspect of it, and right now the county's land development code does have a requirement that any abandoned artesian wells on new development sites need to be plugged, or if they're not plugged, they have to be repaired and controlled under a permit through St. John's. When we do have new projects come in, we have a technical review committee of staff from the various departments that review all new developments, and one of our standard comments from not only environmental planning but from other departments is to advise developers that you need to locate, identify wells, and if there's any wells that aren't being used, they need to either be plugged or regulated. In the backup that I did for this report, I did give an example of a technical review committee letter which included comments from a couple of departments on that issue. One of the concerns is that on these wells, particularly the older wells on agricultural properties that are being converted, that it's not only abandoned wells that are a problem or a potential concern, but also active wells that are actually permitted or even capped. And the concern is, among other things, and this was discussed at the Ag Advisory Committee and subsequently, I believe, in other public forums, is that there's issues of a corrosion of the well casing below ground level, and even if it's a capped or used well, there could be leakage of deep Floridan aquifer water into the shallow aquifer, which could lead to some saltwater intrusion. And now that, particularly now that we're in the drought and the current issue of water supply, this has become more and more of a concern of just trying to control the quality of the shallow aquifer. Right now, On new development sites, again, staff, we require the identification of wells, we require compliance with our codes. One thing that could probably be stepped up is when we do final inspections for certificates of completion or certificates of occupancies of new sites, is to be more diligent and aware of wells that might be on the property that had been identified, to do the follow-up to make sure that they are, in fact, abandoned and capped. And that's something we've contacted the other departments who look at these issues to see if there's any way to upgrade that part of it. So that's essentially it. We do accept the committee's recommendation, and we support the commission's direction to staff to maintain and to try to enhance its diligence in these wells.
Mr. Chairman, as the commissioner, the liaison for the Ag Advisory Committee, this came forth out of some concerns that just simply put, as far as some of the wells flowing into the retention ponds and using as an unpermitted source of irrigation, or just quite frankly just water flow and wasteful use of our resources. Additionally, we really came to the conclusion that the St. John's Water Management District, they have an inventory of permits of wells that we know basically where they are if they have been permitted. And it's kind of, we didn't, in order to not have a scenario like we had on the corner of the Sebastian River and 512 where we had a well break off because we didn't have somebody go in there and find it, cap it, and take care of it. We're trying to take care of that in a subdivision as well. And it's a very simple process to be able to look through, say, okay, we have a well that's been permitted, we know where it is, therefore if you're going to not use it for agricultural purposes and no longer need to keep this permit active, let's go ahead and dispose properly of this straw into the fluoridating aquifer. And that's really the nature of the of how the dialogue came forth and the committee's recommendation came about.
Do we have any numbers, I mean, on how many
wells in Indian River County are permitted?
I do
No. Well,
I can give you a couple of numbers that I've gathered in looking at this. And the information that was provided to us, the GIS information, was 2004 consumptive use permit wells. And there was about 19, I think that the number was like 1983, or just short of 2,000 wells. Now, some of those wells that were documented, some of those have been capped or abandoned, some are active, some are inactive. That's the total inventory of wells that they have documented under the consumptive use permits. And it is a JS layer. It can be zoomed into a particular property. The exact pinpoint of the well is not necessarily, dependable, but at least it tells you that there's some wells on the site that need to be looked at, and that is something that does help us in verifying whether there's potential wells on the site. Typically, if an agricultural property is coming in like a grove conversion, I mean, we pretty much assume there's wells on the property that need to be addressed, but this helps us locate them more exactly.
And I think, just to reiterate what Roland said, the importance of the rotten casing of the well is it corrodes, and the intrusion from the deeper saltwater portion of an artesian well into the superficial fluoridating aquifer. That is an unseen consequence that we're trying to take advantage of. And many residents that do not have perhaps a 4-inch well that goes down 300, 400 feet, they tap into the superficial fluoridating aquifer 80 feet down. So kind of taking care of that water resource at the same time. And with that, if there's, we've got some people from the Ag Advisory Committee that may have like to say a few words, but. Bob Adair's our chairman of the Ag Advisory Committee. He's been doing a phenomenal job putting the agenda together, though, and bringing these issues forward. I'd like to give him a compliment on that and say to him, keep up the good work.
Okay, thank you, Wes. My name is Bob Adair. I'm chairman of the Agricultural Advisory Committee, and thank you for giving us this time to address a concern that came up before our members. I'm passing around the first page of a letter that's being circulated to Bob Bruce, who's your chair of your P&Z, and on there it amplifies the concern from the Soil and Water Conservation District Board, and that's item number 2. I think I accept the fact that planning is going to be more attentive to this, and I think the point we're trying to do is heighten the importance of conservation of a very valuable resource by which our county gets its drinking water, as well as our agricultural users over the last 60 plus years have been using for their agriculture. It's a great resource, but it is very limited. I guess what I wanted to point out is that there is a possibility for cost share funding from St. Johns River Water Management District to get a mobile irrigation lab that could be coupled not only with helping with urban irrigation and agricultural irrigation, but also looking into well monitoring. I think part of the issue is not just wells that exist in old ag lands that are being converted to urban use, but in particular existing wells that are out there that maybe escape that process, that are leaking, and they are very difficult to determine. I think that one thing I'd like to add is that there needs to be clarification between plugging and capping. And those terms are incorrectly used sometimes, or interchangeably used. When you plug a well with concrete, it's no longer a well. It's completely gone. Capping is basically a closed valve, which may be leaking at the surface, and it may be leaking through the casing below the surface. So capping is nothing that our board is recommending that be done. But plugging, if the intentions are not to use the well or they can't use the well, it should be plugged, and there is cost share money for that. I think in addition to the somewhere around 2,000 permitted wells, those are only wells that are generally 6 inches in diameter and larger. There's probably 5 times that many wells that are under that diameter. Those are the ones we're concerned about because we don't have those geo-referenced with longitude and latitude measurements, and that's where the searching for the wells comes in. One quick point: if any ag land 10 to 20 acres or larger is being converted, there's probably a well there, and that's an important issue. And if there's and I guess the last thing is in the assessment or analysis by staff under your section 93109 under artesian flow wells, item number 2, it says that artesian water may not be used to replenish artificially created surface water bodies. And I guess that's the stormwater retention ponds. It says it's prohibited. I would like to point out that a lot of current developments do use that water that I'm personally aware of. I don't know how you want to deal with that. I just bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Johnson.
Bob Johnson, Carlwyn Subdivision. I'm confused on what we're trying to do here. Are we trying to eliminate artesian wells in the county? Are artesian wells on ag property okay, but you know, a lot of these retention ponds that have fountains and all that probably are artesian well, maybe. What's the impact on the county? You know, what's a new development? You know, is this something that we're trying to do? You know, all of a sudden we drive down a street that's really looks beautiful and has water splashing and adds a lot of a quality of life to our county, and we come out with a ruling that says eliminate artesian wells, which maybe this retention pond is being used as a source of water. So I'm not sure what we're trying to do here. We read in the paper this morning where they want to water ag property. So is this the first step in eliminating artesian wells and then going to reuse water to water So I'm not sure where we're headed in the long term here.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
No, Mr. Johnson, what we're trying to do is basically unwanted or unneeded artesian wells are a liability. And what we're trying to do is to identify that liability and take care of that liability before it has an environmental impact as far as continuous flow water out of the aquifer into surficial aquifer or even on the surface and then draining in, causing sediments as they flow into tributaries or canals.
Wesley, what's an unneeded artesian well?
An unneeded artesian well would be a well in the middle of a development that they, quite frankly, are going to have to get rid of because they're going to put a house over it, a road over it, or something along those lines. Could be one that they take and dig a pond around, and they just break it off down deep, and it's continuously flowing from that into the pond. And it's not they can still have these wells for irrigation purposes inside subdivisions. It's not that we're trying to do away with those if they're utilizing them for an appropriate purpose. But all we're trying to do is to put forth a concerted effort and identify the wells that basically could become a liability in the future to keep us from wasting water whenever they're not necessarily needed.
Well, we just had a presentation by St. John's Water Management District, and we read about water problems in the south, and I didn't hear anybody at that presentation say that Indian River County, matter of fact, Indian River County was doing a pretty good job on water management. I mean, a third of our county is already being under conservation by the St. John's Water Management District, so I think we ought to give some thought to what we're doing on plugging up artesian wells and so forth.
Just as a little aside, Bob, this isn't reinventing the wheel. In fact, we have a cost share program that we provide 50% of the funds for on an annual basis, and the St. John's provides the other 50% of the funds to go around and actually address these broken wells. If we have issues where a landowner say, listen, I don't need the well, it's just simply flowing, we have that cost share program in place already.
Well, last time I read my trim report, I paid taxes to the St. John's Water Management District too. So, even though we have a cost share program with them, we don't necessarily need to accept that either, Wesley. So all I'm saying is be careful in what we're doing here.
Commissioner, I don't mean for anybody to get confused by what we're trying to do and what Mr. Johnson's saying. If there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to address them. But I mean,
we're trying to conserve water here and not waste it.
Yeah. Right. Okay. And that's really the long and short of this. I don't know. There's no clandestine secret operation up my white long sleeve shirt. But
I think that we should maybe send a letter to St. John's that they should be more aggressive, because let's face it, it's called St. Water Management District, and they do have their own taxing authority to be more aggressive at plugging the wells. It's really their responsibility, and we've been glad to share with them. But my understanding with the legislative changes, they're not capped with taxing authority, but we are. School boards aren't capped, the biggest item on your tax bill. We're supposed to become more efficient, but school boards don't have to. And I think, and either do water management districts. And I think we need to make it clear that that is their job, and they need to be more aggressive at doing that. We've been putting local funds in to help them, and they have their own taxing authority, and they could be more aggressive at plugging wells. And I think we need to probably send a resolution asking them to help the situation in Florida more.
And currently, Commissioners, this is not a part of our land development regulations to require that these wells be kept. That's all we're looking for right now, is if you have a developer that's going to put in a subdivision on an existing site that has wells there, basically we are requiring that they be capped and the water not be wasted and the well be terminated properly. That's all it is.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Capped or plugged?
Excuse me, plugged. I did exactly what Bob said I shouldn't do, use them interchangeably. Yeah. And we have some comments in the back also.
Who? Yes, sir. Don?
I received a letter the other day from St. John's Management that they'd like to have Point West take a couple of million gallons of water for irrigation. I have a well in an older development, and what if that well runs dry due to the water being taken out of the aquifer? Who pays to have it, and you're not allowing any other wells to be drilled for water? What do you do at that point?
I'm going to have to refer that one to Margarita.
I'll have to check with our...
Okay.
See me after.
Yeah, what they're applying for, though, is a consumptive use permit.
Right.
They probably already have one, and they're just probably renewing that consumptive use permit. And that's basically what, with these permitted wells, that's what you apply for when you get a well permitted. You apply for a consumptive use permit, and you let the St. John's Water Management District know the number of gallons that you plan on using, and then they issue you the permit. And it does a couple of things. First of all, it identifies where the well is. Secondly, it identifies how much water they're trying to get a good grasp of how much water is being drawn off the Floridian aquifer, so that we can plan accordingly for our future water needs. That's basically the logic behind the permitting, and they let surrounding property owners know. They don't want it to be a secret as far as if somebody's going to be increasing their water capacity or renewing a permit for consumptive use.
But an older home could have a shallow well.
Yes.
And at that point, with the aquifer, it could make it go dry.
And that's why you're being notified. Yes.
Right.
Now, exactly what the next step is, I'm not sure. I'd have to find out.
Will you allow another well to be drilled deeper?
Typically, I'm kind of going off in an area that we probably shouldn't, but if it's just a 2-inch well, yeah, you don't need a permit. I don't know what size well you have, but again, this is one of the things that Mr. Derrick mentioned, is that a large problem out there is it's the 6-inch in diameter wells, and on where I live, I've got more 4-inch wells than I do 6-inch wells. So that's kind of an area that kind of falls through the cracks a little bit.
I think the health department, the environmental health, looks at wells under 6-inch to some extent as far as permitting and.
You change jurisdictions.
When you build a house, want to put a well in for irrigation your lawn, do you need
If it's under 6-inch well, you'll be dealing with the environmental health department.
So you do get a permit even for like a 2-inch well or whatever?
I would say that
60 feet or?
Yep, I would say that's more to make sure you don't put it next to your drain field, though.
Well, but you can do a well, and your well might not be good. You hit salt water, or you have saltwater intrusion, or it might be good for today, and a year or two down the road, it's not good.
Right.
Then you try to do another well.
But see what the county stated when they put the water into the area. They stated if your well goes dry, you have to go on to county water. My question is, if it goes dry due to someone's usage, are you allowed to go deep, drill another well for that without going on county water?
I don't know. I'll find out for you. Yeah,
Thank you.
Get with me. I'll find out for you.
Mr. Chairman, up to now, the county, when we have a planned development comes before you, one of the questions is water available? All right. Now, when South County Initiative came along and whether it was water available, oh yeah, there's water available. We can run it from another water source through pipes across the county, and there's water available. We have never, to the best of my knowledge, ever considered in the planned development water like we're discussing now, and aquifers, and we're always discussing running it across county and this kind of thing. So I think we ought to make sure that we in the future address that situation too then. Thank you.
Commissioner, this is, by the way, outside the urban service boundary area typically. I mean, and whenever they do put a subdivision in, that's why the wells are no longer needed. They do have to provide water to the residential development. Therefore, that's why the appropriate capping and, plugging of the wells.
Can I have a clarification? In the county, you cannot have a well to water your yard?
Sure, you can.
No, I think the issue is the focus here is more of the abandoned wells, the free-flowing wells that are not being used for a permitted and regulated purpose, such as irrigation.
Yeah, I realize that, but we got off on
that. I don't know that there's no prohibition on using wells for irrigation.
Okay, I just wanted to correct that.
You get the permits.
Yeah, for the record.
Yep.
Mr. Baker.
This might be kind of off the subject too, but I was wondering, I thought we were going to have a workshop in April on our water uses in the county. Were we going to have one?
For the record, Eric Olson, we've been trying to put together a meeting. I think the last meeting we had was a workshop at St. John's and South Florida Water Management District I think what we're trying to do at this point, Darcy's trying to schedule everybody's calendar in such a way that we can get all the commission together. We're prepared from our standpoint as to put it together. The second phase of this alternative water supply program, we're ready. We just need to get everybody together at the same place like this and kind of develop a schedule. So, Bob, you're right. We're just trying to get all the pieces together like that. We've got our report ready.
Yeah, they're working on it, I guess. Thank you, Dr. Baker. Is there anyone else wants to be heard? We got a motion. We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0.
Wait, just let me back up. Are you recommending a mobile irrigation lab?
No, staff recommendation.
Well, that was on this one.
That's on the letter, not on the
Yeah.
recommendation of the
Okay.
motion
Yes.
from the Agricultural Committee.
Okay.
Sunrise Vero Beach LLC's request for vacation of Sunrise subdivision plat, found on pages 96 through 106.
Good morning. I'm Stan Bowling, Planning Director. A plat vacation request erases a final plat application from the public records, and that's essentially the request before you all this morning for a subdivision plat that's been recorded, but no construction has commenced. The original developer still owns it and is the applicant for the plat vacation. The site is located south of Oslo Road on the east side of 27th Avenue between 17th Street Southwest and 15th Street Southwest, and the layout was approved as a small lot subdivision for 134 lots. And again, the site remains vacant. There are development sites around it, but no construction has commenced. And the final plat was approved in August of 2005, and in fact, it was one of the last final plats that was approved where 100% of the construction was essentially bonded out. They entered into a contract, posted security for all the construction. As you all know, that is not allowed now, so this is kind of a unique situation in that regard. So there is a contract for 100% of the improvements to be done, security in the amount of over $2.9 million, and this plat vacation would undo the final plat itself, and the preliminary plat approval for the subdivision would remain in place. The ability to do the project would remain in place, but the contract would go away, the letter of credit would go away, and the plat itself would go away. There were some rights-of-ways that were dedicated with this plat for 15th Street Southwest and 27th Avenue. Those dedications would remain in place the way that the vacating resolution is structured, and again, it would just undo the final plat itself. What would stay in place until it expires is the preliminary plat approval and the land development permit for doing the project. Going through with the plat vacation, and staff recommends approval of this vacation request, it would do two things. For the county, it would keep the county from ever having to assume the obligation of having the improvements completed. And that's important from staff's perspective. It would also allow a second developer to come in and do the project. And as we stated in the staff report, Habitat for Humanity actually has this project and the site under contract. They're in the due diligence period, and it's possible that they could pick up the project. Again, the preliminary plat would still be valid, and the land development permit still valid for a period of time. Staff's recommendation is that the board approve the plat vacation request with the resolution, again, doing away with the contract for construction and the need for the security. I'd be glad to try to answer any questions that you might have.
Is this going to help or hurt Habitat for Humanity if they want to do this project?
I think this is going to help them.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Stan, two things. One, I drove by the site yesterday. I'm pretty sure I was going by it. It has not been cleared. There's been no work on the site, correct?
That's correct.
So it's still vegetated. It's not like a Bristol Bay or anything.
That's correct.
It looks nice, okay. And then, would this fall under our new small lot subdivision regulations, or would it be the old?
It would be kind of an interesting situation here. It would not fall under the new small lot subdivision regulations. The preliminary plat approval would still be valid, but the potential second developer who's interested in the project is Habitat for Humanity, and it is it seems likely that it would wind up being the type of small lot subdivision that now is required.
All right, but I guess theoretically, someone else could come in and
Right.
still build big houses on the small lots.
That's correct. That's correct.
Is there any way to, other than completely eliminate the entire preliminary plat, to have it fall under the new guidelines?
And this is a question that staff, we went through with the applicant, and the attorney's office issued an opinion, and the preliminary plat will still be valid until November 20th, 2008, as will the land development permit. And so we cannot undo or expire that preliminary plat approval. It kind of gives was actually a fairly small window for someone to step in and do the project. And as far as we know, Habitat's the only one interested in doing it in this current market.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are there any existing developer agreements regarding that plot of land?
Well, the contract for constructing that particular layout is on the books right now and would go away with this action to vacate the plat and to adopt the resolution that's attached.
So, any requirements for roadways or turning lanes?
The requirements that are attached to the preliminary plat, which includes off-site improvements, would still, whatever second developer might pick up the project would have to do what this first developer was obligated to do.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend that move staff recommendation, vacate the final plat, and for you to exercise the abandonment resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next item is Utility Services, Continuing Consulting Services, Work Order Number 19 with Mass Stellar Moller Reed Taylor, Inc. for surveying services for pump station found on 107 through 111.
Move staff recommendation on this one.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries 5-0. Approval of work authorization number 2007-007 for utility conflict resolution by Utilities Department, Labor Contractor, Underground Utilities, Inc. for Public Works Department bid number 2006-065, project number 9611, and County Road 512, Phase 3 improvements found on pages 112 through 115.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Bella Rosa Village Oaks Multi-Family Development Revised Developments Agreement for construction of off-site 6-inch sewer force main and reimbursement by county to developer found on pages 116 through 123.
Move staff recommendation.
We have a motion?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Change order number 2 to Indian River County contract 2006025 with TLC Inc. for membrane restoration work at the South RO plant found on pages 124 through 127.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign, motion carries. Approval of bid award and sample agreement for Indian River County bid number 2007044, construction of right-of-way supply wells, utilities, and department. And that's found on pages 128 through 142.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. I think we may be close to setting a record.
Good.
Yes.
Well, no, wait a minute. Request from Commissioner Wesley Davis for consideration of recommendations made by the Agricultural Committee.
Well, we had one of Mr. Chairman come forward today. There's been several other ones. And Bob, if you'd like to come up and kind of help me with this. One of them we need to go and we're trying to schedule a tentative meeting with the property appraiser's office. But others are some water reuse issues that we were wanting to talk about. And that was what was in the paper today. So I'll let Mr. Adair kind of take over here.
Okay, well, basically, it's a recommendation to look into reuse water for agricultural use outside the urban service area. And basically, again, from a conservation perspective, we're recommending to the Board of County Commissioners that anything we can do to become less dependent on deep water from the Florida aquifer is a benefit to our county and certainly to our region. The reason that we think this is a good idea is because agricultural use of deep water doesn't have the benefit of reverse osmosis membranes, which the county does for potable water. Also, secondly, it also does not use deep pumps to pump the water up. It relies on the natural pressure of the artesian water to bring it to the surface to a centrifugal pump. With expanded use of and greater demands on artesian water that we're experiencing in our region, not just in our county, but in our region, which includes Central Florida and Orlando, artesian pressures diminish during periods of drought and during periods of freezes. Secondly, as that usage increases, there's a phenomenon called upconing, which intrusion is a horizontal movement of salt water. Upconing is where the denser, saltier water lying deeper in the Florida aquifer starts to come towards the surface. So if we can provide another source of water for agriculture, as if and when that those two issues come to play in agricultural use, by having the ability for agriculture to tie into this reuse water, you would then be able to sustain your agricultural operations outside the county, and all the benefits that agriculture does provide to the county then continue to happen. With that in mind, I think it's better to look at it now rather than later.
And thank you, Mr. Adair. And I mean, the water reuse issue, they use it all the time on the golf courses.
But do we have enough? I mean,
no, it's very valuable.
I know, that's the situation is,
exactly. No, and when we have the, for example, you have is it the Egret Marsh? That water is, which one?
Spoonbill Marsh?
Spoonbill Marsh.
Out by 8th Street?
That's for the brine reject water in that sense.
Thank you, yeah. But, it's a valuable commodity. It really is. And trying to steer some of that to the agricultural interests, again, it has a benefit because the chlorides are not there that they would typically
Well,
be
I
pulling.
understand that completely. I'm looking at the amount because it is a byproduct of.
Well, for the record, Eric Olson, Commissioner Bowden's right. It is a finite resource. In other words, right now, whatever we produce for every gallon of wastewater we bring into the plants, we created a gallon of reuse water. We have been working with Bob and the Ag Advisory Committee very strongly in this sense, where there are opportunities. We want to maximize at every given point in time. We've been approached by the City of Vero Beach if we can somehow or other supplement their reuse. We obviously would like to work in terms of where there's areas within the ag system. The benefit to the utility department is it's an effluent disposal for us, just as much as it's a resource capability to be able to say, let's maximize it. So we support it in concept where it's available, but as Commissioner Bowden's indicated, there's so many drops to go around, and hopefully we can kind of meet everybody's needs as best we can. But the concept is excellent, and we're working strongly with Bob and where available and that type of thing.
Do we charge for that?
We do. We have a princely sum of 15 cents per 1,000 gallons. It's a very old rate, and basically it's antiquated. We will probably take a look at that, but the benefit is to us, we get a little bit of money, revenue out of it, and it's also, a disposal process.
We should probably do what the oil companies do and based on supply and demand, even if it's perceived.
It is when, I'm going to say probably the best part of maybe 15 years ago when Indian River County put together their reuse regulations and their agreements. That was when they developed the 15 cents. That's not what's charged by the City of Vero Beach and other users.
What do we get now for our water, our portable water that we?
Well, typically, and it varies, but the average number will be about $2.20 per 1,000 gallons, as opposed to the 15 cents that we would charge for reuse like this. But again, the benefit to us is twofold. It's a revenue, but it's also a disposal process. We want to be in a position to where we don't have create any effluent.
Looking at does the charge that we charge cover at least the cost of
the princely sum of 15 cents is very, very low. We've looked at it recently. We've taken a look at it in terms of the what we call the supply and demand concept. I think we would certainly be able to justify additional sums at this point, but right now that's our rate. And again,
I guess the answer to that is we're losing money on it.
We're not making hand and fist money, if that's what your answer is.
Are you elected?
Actually, it's kind of a byproduct of our, it's a byproduct of our water. It's already built in the rates.
It
It's
is.
a byproduct. And we're probably going to look at that cost shifting.
Yeah.
One of the things, when golf course comes on, and we do an agreement, and they do that, the homes that are online, as the pipe goes out, can they tap into this?
Well, unfortunately, our system that was designed many, many years ago is a low-pressure system. The advantage is that it basically dumps into a lake, and then the user takes it from the lake and transmits it to the golf course or whatever they do. The disadvantage is, unlike, like for example, the city of Vero Beach, it's a pressurized system. You don't have the opportunity for the homeowner to turn the spigot on just like they do a potable water system. So we are making that transition. We've made quite a few changes in the last year on our development of regulations and our concepts for reuse. So it's a very big topic for us. Again, we still strongly support, where possible, maximizing users such as ag advisement.
I would support ag being a team player of this water, and we need to probably start looking at the different entities that are able to, and the pecking order.
With time, you're going to see that basically being a prioritization process.
There's been what was it, Orange County or Dade County? Which one of the counties, or Pasco County, they had some...
Orlando has a huge reuse program on citrus.
For agricultural interests, not just golf courses, correct?
That's correct.
Yes, and it's been, it's been an asset that they're, starting to compete over, as the reuse water. And right now, we don't have anything in our LDRs, to the best of my knowledge.
We're in the process of preparing those as we speak. We've actually developed them through the last 6 or 8 months on this process.
And all it means is basically if they're running a water line in, they'll run a purple water line out, and we can put that water wherever we need it. And it's a proper allocation of resources.
It's so popular on the West Coast, they've actually had limitations on reuse in the West Coast.
Right.
Bob, would the agricultural industry be willing to pay the 15 cents per 1,000 gallons?
Absolutely. I wanted to make a couple comments. One is that I think part of the cost is I think it's $75 a foot to run an 8-inch purple pipe off the mainland, and so that if you're a half a mile away from those arteries of distribution, that's a pretty high expenditure. I think agriculture should be more than willing to pay the 15 cents. And what I wanted to point out is once your total dissolved salts go up to a certain point, you cannot only use that water for irrigation. At that point, you cannot use it to spray your trees. You could have defoliation.
Chemical burn, yeah.
The other point I wanted to point out is in this handout that I gave you earlier, the letter to Bob Bruce, and I may be jumping your protocol a little bit because apparently they're going to make those recommendations to you. Under item number 1, the SWCD is recommending that we begin to look into a pressurized system that is one step greater in evolution or another dimension to what we currently do, where we passively flow water into retention areas and then pump from those retention areas. A pressurized system is considerably more expensive, perhaps better to look in now than later, but that increases the efficiency for urban use tremendously. And I think in light of what's going on in our state right now, this drought that we see, we have plenty of water in the state of Florida. We just don't have it when we need it, or we get too much and we don't need it. And I think that's not going to change. And I think as you increase your growth in your county, that these things that we're talking about now are going to become critical. And I think last point is that we need to look at it now. And I think with the reuse, with the water, alternative water supply, that we need to really listen to those recommendations and act upon them in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Bob.
No action on this right now. Just wanted to kind of update everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing nothing else, we'll adjourn.
Great to go back.